I got a question for you all. And I think all of you have some kind of an answer to this question. How do you lift a leg? I'm serious? How do you lift a leg? You just do it, right? When I was 20, I suddenly realized I couldn't answer that question anymore. I had a surgery on my left leg, and for pain relief, I got epidural anesthesia. And when I woke up from that surgery, I was having trouble feeling my legs, and they weren't working as they used to. And it just got worse. And at one point, there was a physiotherapist that came into my room, and she stood to the right on my hospital bed, and she looked at me and she said, "Could you lift your right leg for me?" And I looked down the leg. I said, "Come on, lift." And nothing happened. And she said, "Could you move your left leg, please?" And I looked at the left leg, and I was like, "Come on." And I realized I didn't know how to do it. I've been walking for almost 20 years, and I didn't know how to lift a leg. It turned out that the epidural anesthesia had gone wrong and injured the spinal cord. And no one knew if it was going to get better. The only thing the doctor said was, "We'll have to wait and see. We don't know if it's permanent or if you will be able to walk." How do you deal with that? Let's wait and see. Maybe you'll be paralyzed. Maybe not. We don't know. And I wished I had a book that said how to be paralyzed, that someone could come in with and be like, "This is how you do it." But there was no such book. So I just figured, okay, I'll just have to deal with it my own way. I'll just have to find my way. And I had lots of friends and family coming over, health personnel, coming into my room, and everyone was talking about these legs that didn't work. Everyone was talking about this condition that we didn't know whether it was going to go back or if it was forever. And at a point, I got quite tired because I was like, "Hey, guys, I'm a little bit more than my legs." So I made this list, stating everything that I could still do and everything that I still felt like I was. And this is in Norwegian, so I'm going to extract just a couple of points from it. It's saying that I'm happy that I can think and feel and process impressions. I'm happy to have good friends and family, and that I'm alive and healthy. That's all things to be grateful for, right? So I hung this over my hospital bed for myself, so that every time I was to go in and out of the bed, or I came into the room, I'd see it and remember everything I had, because I could definitely feel what I didn't have, but to remember everything that was still there. And for my friends and family, so they'd see there's more to it than those paralyzed legs. And I had a cousin. He was studying medicine at the hospital I was in, and every day he'd jump by my room and he'd come with a new disease I should be lucky to not have. And he'd be like, "Have you heard of this or that syndrome? That's quite nasty." And some days he'd be like, "Oh, you won't believe what I just found. You should be happy to not have. This is horrible." And it gave me perspective that it could have been so much worse. But days and weeks passed and nothing happened. And the message from the doctors was still, "We're not sure what's going on here. We think it'll pass, but we don't know. Or we don't know when or how. You'll still just have to wait and see." All right. So how do you prepare yourself for not knowing whether you will ever walk again? So I can't think myself out of this situation, but I have to organize myself. So as I saw it, there were 3 outcomes. One of them was, this is going to pass. I'm going to be totally fine. It's just a matter of time. Second is, the paralysis is going to be better. I'm going to be able to walk, maybe a little bit. Maybe I have to use crutches or wheelchair. And the third outcome is that I will never walk again. So preparing for the options, I figured that it was a little risky to go for option one, which was like, this is just going to pass. That was a waiting game. Because, if I just waited and it didn't pass, I would lose months of transition time. Option two was also quite uncertain. So I figured, okay, let's go for option three. That's the best strategy. I'll start adapting. If I end up walking again, it will be a really nice experience to have lived in a wheelchair. And maybe I'm going to learn a couple of party tricks, that I can use for the rest of my life. So, okay, let's make a plan for option three. What does that mean? I was 20 years old, and I looked at life expectancy for women in Norway. That was 84 years at that time. Okay, that's 64 years in a wheelchair. How do that? Okay, to know what is a good life for those 64 years, I needed to know what's important for me in life. What makes me happy? Can I still pursue this after the injury? And I figured the meaning of life, as I saw it as a 20-year-old, was three things. One of them was relations. Friends, family, community, emotional connections to the people I cared of. Second was something to get me up in the morning, purpose. I wanted to do something that I felt useful. And the third one was nature. Being out, feeling the rain in my face and the wind in my hair and smelling the forest, getting perspective. So connections, purpose, and freedom of nature. Can I still get that without the ability to walk? Yes, I can. So that made me trust, however this goes, whatever the outcome is, I can still have a good life. But how? How can I get these three things? First, I figured, okay, I will draw a red line in the sand here. I'm stepping over it. This is my new life. I can never, ever look back and compare to what it used to be, because it is not anymore. Secondly, I cannot compare to what I should have been, because no one gave me a book when I was born saying, this is how your life's going to be. I'm not cheated. There is no shouldn't. We're not promised anything. And the third is, I can never compare to what could have been, because I don't know what that is. Because for all I know, I could have been hit by a bus the day after I was paralyzed. I don't know. I could have been killed. That's worse. So I can't compare, because I don't know what the alternative is. So, okay, let's make a plan. How do I get back into this life of mine? If my arms are going to carry my legs and my whole body and do the job of the legs for the rest of my life, I need to be strong. One, I need to start training my upper body. Secondly, I need to be a wheelchair pro. I need to think of this as my best friend. This is not something which I have to be sorry for. It's not a curse. It's a blessing. This is giving me the freedom I need to move. If I didn't have it, I would have to be crawling on the ground. That's worse. This is the best thing I can have. It's my best friend. And I need to be able to use it, to get where I need to go, do what I need to do. I just need to learn the tricks. And that was a little bit hard. I broke 8 bones the first year and a half. Pretty much from falling, thinking like, oh, it can work. No, it didn't. And once I was trying to jump a curb, and I jumped up, and what you have to do then to jump is that you shift, you take speed, right? You move and you take speed, and you have to tip the front of the wheels up so you can get on top of the curb, and then you shift your weight to get the wheels up, to get the chair up. So I missed the curb, hit it with the small tires, and went straight bang down and broke my arm. And was casted for 6 weeks. And that was a little bit unpractical, you could say. And it got me really being happy about having my arms. But getting back at it, trying and failing, trying and fixing was really important. And another big goal for me was getting back to my studies. How However, it turned out it wasn't the easiest in many ways. One of the things was that quite a few people actually told me, you don't have to get back to your studies. You know, we live in a social society that can take care of you. You don't have to finish your education. Which pretty much got me responding, well, I'm paralyzed in my spinal cord, not in my back, no, not in my head. Last time I checked, you don't need your feet to read and write. And then it was the way of getting back into it. You know, I was living in the fourth floor together with some relatives, and I couldn't do that anymore because there was no elevator. So I needed to move up to a student housing. And every day, to get to the university, I needed to go up 3 hills, across a road, and enter the metro. And I moved up there in January. Yeah. There's a lot of Norwegian here. Norwegians know, moving somewhere in Norway, especially in the places where we have a lot of snow, there's a lot of snow and ice. And one thing for getting up all those hills with no snow, but getting up there with snow, that was a tricky thing. Because when you have these rubber tires, they're just like tick, 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 tick in the snow and you can't move. So I figured, okay, my solution is I'll get a bag of sand. And this bag of sand on my lap, and I would take it in front of the chair and go with the chair over. And that worked for a while, but then it didn't because it was just too much snow, too much ice. So I figured, okay, I still need to go up all those hills. How to do that? And I figured, this is the way. No problem. I'll go out of the chair like that, and I'll just go like that. Drag my feet, take the chair. Go like that, take my feet, take the chair. Through the snow and ice, up the 3 hills and across the road. Not a worry. That's fun, I'm handling this. And it was so boring. It took me 30 minutes every morning. So I started listening to podcasts, so I'd feel like I didn't throw away my time. And then, when you have pants and you have a jacket, what happens when you scoof the snow like that? You get snow all over your back. No worry, I got a jumpsuit. Problem solved. So I was living in a student housing, right? So it was a couple of thousand students going up to the metro every morning. So people were walking beside me and looking down at me while I was crawling on the ground, dragging the chair, listening to podcasts, minding my own game. It was a jumpsuit. And the students would go do you need any help? And I'd be like, does it look like I need help? It's really nice with fresh air in the morning. This is my training. I'm listening to podcasts, actually. This is great. I love this. So I was trying to get to school in the same way as everyone else was doing it. And then at one time, I figured no one else was doing it that way. It was just me. And I was quite exhausted after a couple of months. I had a constant urinary tract infection. Both my arms had tendinitis from my wrist until my neck. And still I didn't want help. Because, I wanted to overcome. I was so stuck on seeing these skinny legs as a practical problem that just had to be overcome. And I missed the fact that my situation and my abilities had changed fundamentally overall. I was quite quick to understand that I was injured, but it took me years to understand and to accept the consequences of living with injury. So I used these to lift my legs. I figured, this is working. I tried to use my arms to compensate for the lost legs. However, what I did learn I needed to do was to reassess my total abilities and organize my life accordingly to the new circumstances, and thinking the whole body, the whole picture. And I realized that I could have a much smarter approach. I figured it was better to move downtown and take the city tram to the university. And even though I proved I could do it, it wasn't very smart to crawl to school. Rather than using my capacity to getting myself to the university, I could spend on actually learning and performing. I'm an athlete, and my class in rowing used to be called Women Arms and Shoulders. It's not called Women No Legs. Doesn't matter, we're competing with arms and shoulders. It's what you can do that matters. And still, we tend to think that your weaknesses, your vulnerability, you think of them as that, rather than assets that you can work with or around. Mapping and acknowledging both strength and weakness makes an honest approach, and it makes it easier to overcome them in a smart way. You need to acknowledge them and acknowledge the effect they have. That matters to non-athletes as well. Because when I'm looking back at the tactics that I was using to transforming after the injury, it's actually a lot of the same tactics that we're using when we're working towards Olympic goals, and also in everyday life, managing tasks. The key questions are, where are you? Neutrally, unemotionally, what's the deal? Where are you? What's the circumstances? Secondly, where are you going? What's the goal? The clearer the goal is, it's easier to walk towards. And how will you get there? What are the consequences of your goals, and what's the consequences of your total abilities? And what's the smart way of using them together? And the fourth thing is appreciating the things that you have, appreciating the things that's working, and appreciating the team, because we're all part of a bigger team. So, back to the question on how to lift a leg. This is a picture that was taken the evening before I was paralyzed. It was the last night I could actually answer the question, how do you lift a leg with, you just do it. And if I'd known that this was the last night I could walk, I'd be dancing on the tables all night. Do you know what I did? I was sitting at the university, writing and reading until they closed. 10 p.m. Because I was having a surgery the day after, and I wanted to be on top of things. This picture is taken when I walked by the pub to say goodbye to my friends that was having a 90s party there. And I would have done the same. Because you can't live your life like every day is your last. You have to live life like it's longer. But we don't know what tomorrow will bring. The only thing you can is focusing on what you can do with what you got, where you're at. Remember, you're part of a bigger team, that you're a puzzle in a big society with your strengths and weaknesses that slips in with other people, and you have to look for opportunities. Thank you.